Well, welcome to our Community Roundtable final report discussion. It feels like we've been working on these roundtables forever at this point, and it's been pretty much a full year since we started the planning process. And so we're really excited to share with you today all of our findings from the roundtables and our results. Most of you, if you attended one of the roundtables, probably met either myself or my colleague Amanda Lindahl. I'm Rebecca McMahon. I'm the Local Food System Program Administrator for K-State Research and Extension. And Amanda, if you wanted to unmute and introduce yourself quickly, that'd be great.
Yeah, hi everyone. Amanda here as our Local Food Systems Program Coordinator. So thanks for joining us.
So we have a lot of ground to cover today. Just like in the roundtables, we were covering a lot of ground. We're covering a lot of ground today as well. So our plan today is I do have a few kind of announcements just to make sure you're all in the loop about some upcoming events and opportunities. And then we are going to review our shared expectations. If you attended one of the roundtables, we kind of had some shared expectations for the discussion. So we're going to review those, see if we want to adjust those for today. And then we're going to dive right into what the process was and what the findings and results were. About 1 o'clock, then the goal is to have some time to discuss. So we'll have a little bit of time to discuss as a whole group. And then we are going to do some breakout rooms about 1 o'clock. So I know some of you will have to likely jump off, have other work responsibilities at some point, at maybe around 1. But if you're able to stay for the last 30 minutes, we're going to have some breakout discussion groups to talk about, with these results, what's next? What are the opportunities that we see across the state or in our local communities? So just a few quick announcements to kick us off. If you aren't already, there are some opportunities to connect with our local food systems team more regularly. One of them is our monthly email newsletter. So I think Amanda is going to drop that link into the chat. If you're not already getting our newsletter, it's a great way to stay connected with what we've got going on. The next thing that we're just super excited about is our state local food summit that is coming up at the end of August. It'll be held down here in Wichita on August 27th and 28th. And registration is open. Early bird registration goes through August 5th, and the hotel block room prices go through August 5th as well. So if you're interested in that, again, another great opportunity to connect with us, but more importantly, with other folks from across the state doing local food system projects. And the last thing on this slide is our quarterly local food virtual town halls. I know many of you attend those regularly, but if you haven't been, I highly encourage you to jump on. It's an hour every quarter, and it's a great way to learn about what's going on across the state. A couple other opportunities. One, the Insight Summit scholarships that we offer through our grant. That's a $200 value, and the Insight Summit is all about new media marketing for small businesses or nonprofits. Could learn things from that as well. And so it's a $200 value. We have our scholarship application open for that right now. And if you or someone you know might benefit from that, go ahead and apply for that scholarship. And then the last thing that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks is our applications for our 2025 Local Food Fellow host sites. Those applications will be open from early August through September 30th. And then we will be reviewing those applications for placing our fellows next year. So if you want to learn more about that program, take a look at that website now, and you can be ready to apply when that opens. So with that, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit after all of our announcements and remind everyone of our shared expectations. So if you attended one of the roundtables, we did share these and discuss them a little bit. So our shared expectations include listening actively, so doing our best to pay full attention to what everyone is saying, doing our best to get to the point. Local food has lots of great stories to share, and we want to hear the stories, but when we are discussing and lots of people have things to say, we want to get to the point as much as possible. Uh, we always encourage you to not just think about the part of the food system that you work in the most frequently, but to think about the entire food system. Uh, Remember that your feedback is valuable. You might be the only one on the call today from your location or with your perspective. So don't hesitate to speak up and share your opinions. And also remember that we're all in this together. Local food is not something that any one of us is going to solve on our own. We need everyone at the table and participating. So with that, I will open it up to see if anyone has any additional thoughts or adjustments that they would like to make to the shared expectations. Does it look good? Okay. Well, hearing none, I will move on from that then. And I will say, I know since this is a lunch hour presentation that many of you will be, eating lunch. So we understand if you want to have your camera off for that time. When we get to our breakout groups, it is helpful if we can have our cameras on. Okay. So the next thing we want to share is a little bit just the overview of what we did for the roundtables. And we ended up doing our roundtables at 14 different in-person sites, as well as 4 virtual sessions. So you can kind of see from the map our distribution across the state of Kansas. We tried really hard to cover the whole state, and we were very pleased with the distribution that we were able to achieve. But of course, there's always areas that we couldn't get to quite as effectively. The 3 primary questions that we asked at the roundtables were, what are the unsolved challenges of your local food system? What are the needs and resources required in order to make progress? And what do you want the future of your local food system to look like? So we asked these 3 questions in a World Cafe style. Everyone rotated and had the chance to answer all of the questions. Attendance, again, we were very pleased with the attendance. Over 400 people attended, and we had people representing all different sectors of the food system. We did tend to have more population attending from the consumer health and wellness education sectors, and less from some of the areas like food waste, food retail, transportation, and things like that. From a demographic standpoint, we did collect demographics for people that pre-registered for the roundtables, but those that walked in at the door, or a couple of our groups that were scheduled separately, we did not collect demographic information from. So a lot of our participants, we don't have that demographic info, but for those that we did collect, the participants tended largely to be female, non-Hispanic, and white. So one of the things to keep in mind as we're looking at the results for the whole state, as well as if you're looking at the results for your individual location, is to keep in mind that we may not have captured all of the voices needed to really get a clear picture of what's happening in your community. So if in your roundtable, if there was no one representing, food processors or food makers, you may need to track some of those folks down and get their feedback to get a clearer picture of what is happening in your community. By the same token, if there weren't that many minorities or folks of different ethnicities or different genders at your roundtable, you may want to do a little bit more conversation with other groups. So our analysis process, what we did after we collected all of the data, we reviewed all the data, we transcribed it, And then we read through all of it and identified kind of some overall themes and concepts that we felt showed up over and over again. And then I went through every comment multiple times and coded those comments into categories. So for example, if there was a comment about like, our farmers market needs to be able to accept SNAP, then I might have coded that into the category under farmers markets, but I might have also coded that comment under food access because it's, looking at SNAP. It may have been coded under policy because there's policy concerns with SNAP. So one comment may have been coded into a number of different categories to really try to capture all of those ideas. Um, Once we had categories, the categories were organized into kind of the overarching themes, looking at how things fit together, and also just the prevalence of different types of categories and different comments. So one of the things that I felt really strongly about was that as we compiled all of the information, I didn't want to lose any of the comments. I didn't want to just say, well, there were only 10 people that talked about this, so we're not going to include that information. We tried really hard to categorize things and organize all of the ideas so that all ideas were represented in some way in the final document. So it's unlikely, if you shared a particular comment, it's unlikely that it's word for word anywhere in the final report, but hopefully you'll see those ideas represented faithfully somewhere in that report. So the report documents, for those of you, I know a few of you registered just in the last 24 hours, but I did send an email with these final reports. So the final report documents are out there. They're in our bookstore. They're on our website, on our local foods website. And so you can take a look at those. The executive summary is simply a 2-page document. It's a really great high-level document that maybe would be something that you could, use to share some of the overarching concepts, or if you want to take a quick look for something. The full report gets into all the details. It starts with the statewide summary of findings, and then the other part about the final report is that when we get towards the end, it actually has location-specific results summaries. And so let's see here. I'm gonna Oh, I thought I was gonna share it. We'll see. Gonna switch my screen share here really quick. Okay. So in the final report, I'm not going to go page by page in great detail, but the couple things that I do want to highlight is as we go in here, each section, each question that we asked is pretty clearly marked, so you should be able to find your way through that pretty readily. And
Oops,
then
Rebecca, you're showing us the local food summit.
Oh, am I? Sorry. Too many things on my screen. There we go. Okay.
Perfect.
Say it wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without one, or two or three electronic snafus, right? Okay, so as you get about halfway through, so starting at page 12, there are result summaries for each individual location. So, if you attended at the Clay Center location, or if you're geographically closest to that Clay Center location, wanted to see what might be different about my location versus the whole state. And so in this case, you'll see that we have still the results with what do we want the future to look like, using some of the same verbiage, but slightly different. And then we went into a lot more detail. So in these reports, in these local summary reports, again, all of the comments are represented. Nothing was left out. and they are roughly organized in the order of the number of times that the topic came up. So in the Clay Center, when we're talking about the future, the thing that came up the most frequently was resources available for education and technical assistance. Under the challenges, the challenge that came up most frequently in Clay Center was cost, quality, freshness, type, and nutrition of available food. So you can kind of go through the different locations and kind of see where things are different. So if we look at Colby, you'll see the top goal was diversified farms, and the top challenge was access to resources, investment, and funding. So you can see those differences across the state by looking at your local results summaries. Okay, gonna switch back to the presentation. All right. So results overall, when we organized the results, I started with the future because I thought there were so many inspiring statements in these future results that I wanted to start there. I didn't want to start by talking about all the things that are challenges. And so the report starts by looking at what do Kansans want for their local food systems. And we came up with 3 statements that kind of collect all of those ideas into one place. And, so I'm not going to read all these to you. You can read through them, but I will point out that the biggest highlights in what we want for our future is really what's highlighted. We want those local, fresh, nutritious foods that are available to all community members. So one of the common themes was food access, not having people in our state that are hungry, that are needing food, and having access to good quality food, not just, whatever junk food is available at the closest convenience store, but good quality food for everyone. And then the next most common theme in the future section was this idea of having a wide range of market outlets. So instead of just focusing on like farmers markets or roadside stands, we want to see local food available in lots of different places and creative ways to market local food as well. So it's something that consumers wanted, it's something that producers wanted. Everyone is looking for more ways to get local food to the consumers through lots of different market outlets. And then, having profitable and diversified farms that are of the appropriate scale to meet the needs for food in their particular communities. And then the last piece of this is having effective and collaborative networks and systems, so just all of those support structures in place that enable these first 2 things to happen. So we're not going to spend much time today drilling down into the bullet points under the future. If you look through the full report, you get into a lot more detail. But we did highlight kind of 3 different areas of keys to success, and those being connection and culture, entrepreneurship, and inputs and resources. And so those same themes, you're going to see those same themes repeated when we get to the needs as well. So that need for building more connectivity, supporting businesses and entrepreneurs, and having the inputs and resources that we need. It's kind of just saying the same thing in 2 slightly different ways. Excuse me. So then we get into the challenges facing our food system. And again, it kind of tracks pretty well all the way throughout. The 3 overarching challenges that we see across the state are food access and food insecurity, our capacity for food system entrepreneurship, and having more broad consumer engagement, having everyone be participating in our local food markets and really having the skills and knowledge and awareness that they need. So I will mention again with the food access and food insecurity. It was a really interesting area to learn more about and how this looks in different parts of the state. And one of the things that we learned is that there's a lot of similarities between food access and food insecurity, no matter if you are in an urban area or a rural area. But there are some unique experiences, between our more rural and our more urban parts of the state. And so we want to be both aware of that, but also understanding that a lot of the challenges that we're facing are very similar. And then the capacity for food system entrepreneurship, across the board, lots of discussion about the challenges that existing farms and businesses face, the challenges of starting new farms or businesses, that there's not capacity to address those challenges, or it's difficult to find the resources that folks need in order to be successful. So again, lots more to read in the full report in that section. And then the last part of what we talked about is, what do Kansans need to make progress on their local food systems? And so we broke this down into 6 areas. And in this case, I'm actually going to go through them in a little more detail, pull out some of the more in-depth findings from the report. So the first area of need is this area of connection, collaboration, and communication. And so what we found is that um, across the state, there is the desire for more people to be doing that work of facilitating the communication, the collaboration, the connection. This could be at a local level, it could be at a regional level, it could be at a statewide level. Just needing more people on the ground helping to build those connections. Some of the connections that came to light or that were discussed were stronger connections between our producers and consumers, but also between producers and institutions, or other purchasers, rather than just, a home cook that, or home individual household that's looking to purchase products, but between producers and larger entities. And then also between different businesses, between different types of businesses, between our farm businesses and retail businesses and things like that, all were brought up. And then also just more collaboration and communication between our support organizations, nonprofits, government, consumers, businesses. There's and this will come up other times as well, but just that idea of, how do we know what resources are, where they are, how do we access them, how do we keep people connected to those resources on a regular basis. The next need that was identified was for financial resources. One of the things that came up relatively frequently were different ways for producers, infrastructure, and businesses to have more financial capital available. So through incentives, sometimes it was brought up as incentives or better insurance options, access to capital, kind of a range of different financial resources, and especially for our small, beginning, and underserved populations of farms and businesses. So part of that comes along with looking for assistance in finding grants, or better knowing how to write grant applications, um, finding grants and funding that will pay for staff time to help increase that capacity. And then some other things that came up under financial resources were funding and incentives for community school and home gardens, and then also for schools, food assistance, and other organizations to actually be able to purchase local food on a regular basis. The next need identified was a shared vision. And so there's a number of different things under this one as well. A big part of this is just awareness, education, and engagement with the broader population related to local food systems. That includes helping people understand the benefits and the value of local, fresh, healthy food. Um, Finding ways to build broad community support, but especially from our local leaders and policymakers. Um, that then comes into schools, having the schools involved and other youth organizations, uh, providing more education on, I almost call it life skills, cooking, nutrition, healthy food, food production, food systems concepts. There's a desire for more knowledge and engagement of food policy councils. And again, so you can see I kind of broke it out. There's a section about youth and having those skills, but then also just broad consumer awareness and skills related to purchasing and cooking food. And then overall, just a better understanding of how to collectively grow our food system. The next need identified was human capital. And you've kind of already seen this theme a little bit. You can see where there's overlapping between these different needs. The need for reliable and trained labor in all sectors of the food system. So sometimes that means farm workers, sometimes that means, more agency staff, sometimes that means more people driving trucks. It means a whole bunch of different things. So that one really may be different depending on your part of the state and what the needs are. Paid positions for food policy council staffing and food system coordination. That kind of ties back to that first challenge a little bit, or that first need. Staffing to assist with grant writing and procuring funding, staffing of agencies that work with inspections and provide regulatory oversight, just more technical assistance in that regard. Mentorship and support for new businesses, and then overall empowering all community members to make progress. So really getting everyone involved in some way on this process. The fifth challenge, or the fifth need, was technical assistance and resources. And so you can see there's a lot of words on the screen here. There's just a lot of different things covered in this category. So resources needed to help farmers address a range of different challenges, climate, how to diversify, how to make sure they're profitable, all of those different sorts of things, including opportunities that increase production capacity and profitability. Risk management and succession planning for small businesses, including like our grocers, our meat processors, other small businesses that are part of our food system. Technical assistance to build capacity in aggregation and distribution systems. There's a challenge in many places across the state is how to move food from point A to point B. And then resources related to food waste, including food recovery and compost, technical assistance for understanding and navigating regulations for producers and businesses, and then overall program support for facilitating land access, especially for beginning producers. So then our final need identified was policy regulations and government support. And so this again covers a fair bit of ground, all the way from wanting our government leaders at all levels to be engaged meaningfully in helping promote local food system work. So that again looks very different depending on the level of the food system you're talking about. Policies that support municipal food waste and composting, looking at municipal zoning codes and ordinances that are supportive of food within city limits rather than preventing production within city limits, and really digging into that. A couple of comments about food access. So some of the food access policies, we're looking at universal free school meals, as well as eliminating barriers to SNAP and SNAP applications across the state. Again, you can see the overlap between the different areas. So looking at grants without high match requirements or other barriers that are difficult for small businesses to access the funds. Looking at more implementation of farm to school across the state. And then finally, reducing barriers created by policies and regulations. So again, covering a lot of different ground with all of these needed areas. So let's see where I'm at here. So with that, I think I'd like to open it up for any clarifying questions. So are there things that you're not sure about, like why did you do what you did, or how did that work, or I don't understand what the differences are between challenges and needs, things like that. So
Rebecca,
if yes.
I was just going to jump in. There's one question in the chat from Brienne asking if I attended a virtual roundtable. Were my results coded with my closest geographical location?
That is a great question. So if you attended a virtual roundtable, your results were coded into the overall statewide results, but they were not added into that local roundtable discussion. No. Any other questions?
One of my thoughts was when you list who wasn't in attendance or who needs to be at the table. Um, I think that it's a little confusing because I think that was a question we all wrote down at the end of who else needs to be here. And I know I wrote down, I was attending as a farmer's market manager at the time, and I was there as that, but I also wrote down all the other farmers markets. So I don't know if it clarifies that anywhere on this document that it's we needed more of those people at the table, and those were defined, not defined by you guys from who you didn't see there, but defined by the people that were there and knew that they were missing, if that makes sense.
Yes. So in the final report, I'll share my screen here. So it shows up in two different places. So in the final report, on page 11, it does say who needs to be part of the conversation. And so we kind of summarized it here, with the things that we heard the most frequently. And that's, again, statewide. And this was very much the case. Like elected officials, government employees, and schools were probably mentioned 2 to 3 times more often than most any other category. And farmers and ranchers and local businesses were kind of the next tier. So the overall is right there, but then like at a particular location, so like Clay Center's handy, so we'll take a look at that. In Clay Center, then on that page, it lists who wasn't there. So those are directly pulled from those sticky notes that we collected from you all at the end. And those are again mentioned roughly in order of frequency that they were brought up at that particular roundtable.
Yeah. Thank you. I
Yep.
just want to make sure that people know, like, really understand that there were people there in that area. There just needs to be more people even in that area.
Yep. Any other clarifying questions or things that don't make sense to you from the roundtable results? Okay. So the next thing that I would like to do is I have a Jamboard, and I'm going to drop that link into the chat. And I want to spend a little bit of time just getting kind of your initial reactions, your initial feedback. And so the first question is, what in these results really resonate with you? What piece of it that you saw it and you went, yes, that is definitely my reality in my community. And so you are welcome to put those comments directly into the Jamboard. If you haven't used Jamboard before, we're going to be using it a few times today. But over on the far left side, you can grab a sticky note. You can type in, your idea and save that. And it's going to show up on the board. So go ahead and add some thoughts to the Jamboard. If you aren't comfortable with the Jamboard or hate Jamboards or whatever, feel free to put your comments in the chat, and Amanda or I will transcribe those onto the Jamboard as well. Or if neither the chat nor the Jamboard is your jam, you are welcome to unmute and share your thoughts out loud as well. So give everyone a minute or two. Okay, you can certainly still keep adding to the board. But does anyone want to unmute and share any of their overarching thoughts?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to do like three things at once, so easier for me to talk than comment. One thing I was resonating with me was just different audiences that should be there, and I don't think we saw it was like retiring farmers and non-operating absentee landowners. I'm in fairly constant contact with folks kind of in that back with that profile, and definitely feels like a relevant group to be kind of including in the conversation, especially in regards to land access. So just yeah, that was my my thought when you were kind of talking about different audiences that are engaging. So yeah, I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone else have any thoughts on this first question they wanted to share?
Rebecca,
Yes.
sorry, I'm for whatever reason I'm not able to interact with the board the way I'd like to be able to. It doesn't seem to be working for me, but I just if there's any other way to keep score, keep track, I'd just like to really emphasize the need for government leaders to be engaged in a meaningful way. It often seems to me that there's a select number of individuals who are in decision-making capacities that are familiar with these issues, that care about these issues. And then there's a bunch for whom it's not really on their radar screen. And there is a strong tendency, obviously, because we want the biggest bang for our buck, to simply focus on the ones that we know already have some interest. And we don't really try to expand or engage government leaders more broadly. And that's something that I think that we need to check in ourselves. That there needs to be repeated efforts to try to expand the audience amongst decision makers, rather than just kind of hope that the ones that are already on board will be in a position to do work that we want them to be able to do.
Yeah, and I think that definitely came through in a couple different places, both in the comments, but also in who wasn't there that people wanted to be there. It's the most frequently mentioned group that wasn't in attendance. Okay, so you're welcome to keep adding to this board if you want to. So the next board is, and if you're on the board, you can just click the button at the top to move to the next page. What in the report was surprising to you, if anything? So kind of the same deal. You can add it to the board directly. You can add it to the chat and we'll transcribe it. Or when we get to unmuting, you're welcome to speak it out loud. Maybe nothing surprising. Give everyone another few seconds to think through it. Okay. Does anyone that is shared want to unmute and elaborate on their thoughts? Okay,
Well, I'll say
go
that
for it.
I am loving this conversation about elected officials and that we need more people running for public office. And I just can agree with all of that. And I feel like that's something that I've learned a lot in the last several years as I've transitioned from more like hands-on labor work to more advocacy and policy, is that like the need for elected officials to believe in this work is so important to really see change. So I like this conversation.
All right, we are going to move to the next board. So then kind of the opposite question of what is missing, or is there something that does not reflect your experiences or ideas that you're seeing in the report? It's okay. You can disagree with our findings. I know Teresa mentioned earlier that she would have liked to have seen the attendance numbers for each location included, which that's a good catch. Yeah, Jane, I totally understand that there's a lot of information to digest. So we appreciate whatever feedback you can give on short notice. So Teresa, the hard copies, we actually took pictures of all of the artifacts from the roundtables. So we did not retain the actual hard sheets of paper and post-it notes, but we have the photographs of all of those artifacts. So we'll still have those that documentation for at least through the end of our grant period at this point. Okay. Does anyone want to unmute and share their thoughts on what's missing or what doesn't reflect your ideas or experiences? So, Debbie, do you want to unmute and share your thoughts?
Hi, Rebecca.
Hey, Debbie.
I was, it just looks like a pretty good sized gap between Wichita and Pittsburgh is all I was thinking.
Yeah,
And that's
fair enough.
the
Yeah.
demographics and the economic of the area isn't the same anywhere else in the state. So anyway, it would have been, I would have liked to have seen something somewhere midway, somewhere between Pittsburgh and Wichita, possibly. But anyway,
Okay.
that was the only thing. When you said what was missing, that's what I was thinking.
That's what we want to hear. Thanks, Debbie. Anyone else have any thoughts or things they'd like to share?
This is Chelsea from
Hey,
Phelps
Chelsea.
County. I had made the comment about like the scale. So, right, if there's 5 top priorities, is there a bigger gap between 1 and 2, or are they all the priorities just from like input from people all pretty the same? So, right, the scale of priorities, and I know you collect just data, but if everyone said that number 1 was top priority and then only 5 people said that number 5 was top priority, but just based on numbers, that's kind of what turned out to be the top 5. So I think some type of representation on the scale of priorities and the number, I guess, of who made that a priority.
Are you asking about like the state results, like in the needs, or are you asking more about the local results?
I was looking more at the local one. I haven't really looked at kind of the big state one yet.
Yeah. So I think I'll actually switch over to that report quickly. What I would say is that in the local results, the things listed under top goals, typically had a pretty strong separation from the other things mentioned. But the part of the reason that we didn't include more of those numbers in there is because, like, in some cases, there were maybe 20 people at the round table and something was only mentioned 1 or 2 times at that round table, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be considered because of the who wasn't in the room. So that's I think what would be the caveat with that is that of the people that were in the room at a particular roundtable, the things listed first usually had a pretty strong, you know, difference in the numbers. But I'm really hesitant to, go in there and say like we should focus on those top goals to the exclusion of the things that didn't float to the top quite as much, without maybe having some more conversation, with those folks that were identified as not being there or needing more people in the room. And so that's honestly why we didn't put the numbers in there, is because we didn't want those numbers to deter people from thinking about those ideas.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else want to share any of their thoughts or ideas? And say, I do agree, Sarah. Like, we tried really hard to say that each location was open to people from a wider range, but in most cases, it was primarily people from that city or that county that attended. And so that's definitely a weakness in the whole process. Okay. Last chance to have any thoughts on this question. Okay, so the last question that I have is, how might you use this information in your community or with your organization? So I know some of you are serving in statewide roles, some of you are very much on the ground in your local communities. Um, some of you are business owners, some of you work for Extension. So maybe think through and throw out some thoughts as to, what are you what might you do with this information? Okay. Does anyone want to unmute and share their thoughts? Just got a short time here before we move on to our next thing.
So this is Michelle.
Hey, Michelle.
Hi. So I could use this in a couple of different ways. I'm a regional mobility manager and I work with public transportation agencies. So we could use some of the information found in this report to talk about food access and how transportation can better support that in the communities that I work with. And then, also across the state as a collection of mobility managers. And then we've also started a food policy council in the past year in Saline County. And so we can use this as kind of a jumping off point for our local food assessment that we are trying to complete.
That's great. Thanks, Michelle. And I would also point out that if you haven't looked at it in detail, in the challenges section under food access, there's a number of points about transportation in there. So if that's your area. Megan, did you want to share something? Go ahead, Megan.
Hi, sorry for being excited here. I just wanted to piggyback off of what Michelle's saying. I'm on the Food Action community team with Michelle, and I haven't really announced it yet, but this is, I guess, the appropriate time to do so. I made the comment on, I am starting in my personal life a grassroots initiative. It is separate from my work as health educator for the health department, but I imagine that this neighboring movement, I want to make it local for the whole city of Salina, even making it bigger. But it really is grassroots and involving just knocking on your neighbor's door, getting to know them, and sharing, any resources that you may have, so that, one, they're prepared for like emergencies, or two, they just like know who you are. There's more safety in your neighborhood. And then hopefully, if we have at least one person who wants to be a good neighbor, and in many neighborhoods strategically placed across Salina, that could be used by other coalitions to help get the work out and get people more mobilized. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Megan. I did want to call out one of the comments is like, could the questions or the process be used in locations not represented to gain more feedback? And so that is definitely a yes. We still have the process. We have extension facilitators that are trained in using the process. So, if your local community is at a starting point and feels like it would be beneficial to do this type of World Cafe discussion about your local food system, that would definitely be an option. You could reach out to me and I could get you connected with someone that can help with that. Maybe a local facilitator or Amanda or I may be available depending on all the details. So that is definitely an option. Okay. So it is 1 o'clock. We need to transition into our breakout groups. So Amanda, do you want to kind of briefly go over the instructions for that while I get the breakouts assigned and hope that everything goes correctly? Sometimes breakouts can be nerve-wracking for everyone.
Yeah, so we're going to be put into some breakout rooms with the intent of having more specific time to brainstorm some ways that we can work towards action or making progress on some of these needs. So each breakout room is going to have a different specific need that was identified in the report. And we'll be working towards putting ideas for what we might see as identifiable, like easy wins, or ideas, suggestions that you already have experience with that maybe need to be shared, or a new idea that you might think could help us make progress on that specific need. So again, we know that there's a lot of like overlaps among our needs. So just kind of, we're all going to be looking at different needs, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of shared ideas, and that's totally fine. But we hope that we can get some really great identifiable, like specific easy wins. And we've included a few different types of categories that you might consider within those ideas. One of them being like an activity, something that might be a one-time event or occasional, activity that you might choose to do. Another kind of focus might be programs, so something that might be a reoccurring event, activities that might be done, but of course by business, organization, individual, group. And then the third kind of category being policies. So if you think about, the policies that really, regulate how we do business or allow us to make change, what policy changes might be, might be good ideas for us to make progress on these needs. So those instructions will be in each group, and hopefully that was a good enough introduction.
Okay. Thanks, Amanda. So I'm going to open the rooms, and hopefully everyone finds themselves in a room and all of my facilitators find themselves in the correct room. So 15 minutes, here we go. Okay. It looks like it's going to make me assign them individually.
Yeah, I didn't get a pop-up.
No, oh well. It's more fun this way.
Absolutely.
Bill, are you seeing a pop-up to move you to one of the breakouts? All right, welcome back. Looks like everyone mostly made it to and from the breakout rooms. Breakout rooms always make me nervous. I feel like people get lost in cyberspace somewhere. So, all right. So we've got a few minutes that I'd like to have each group share out just a couple of their ideas. So I know 15 minutes was just about long enough to scratch the surface and not really cover everything. So we'll go ahead and start with group 1 that was looking at the connection, collaboration, and communication need. So Katie, do you want to share out from your group?
Sure. Thanks, Rebecca. So we, of course, needed more time, but there were some great, Megan and Jay were in this group and we had some great thoughts. One was community food resource fairs at fairs, either regional or state fairs, where you can bring growers and community members together, as well as another activity like back to school fairs or finding opportunities for families and children to connect with growers in their area. But we also talked about succession planning for local growers. So not just traditional conventional growers, but succession planning for small scale growers. And then also promoting success stories and somehow requiring elected officials to get engaged in this process somehow.
You solve that one, let the rest of us know. Okay, breakout 2, financial resources. Jenny.
Yes, we had a little bit of challenge with this one. It's kind of overarching, but a lot of the issues that we were talking about is that with financial resources, that there are some stuff out there. It's just really connecting people to each other. So one thing that we felt important was to continue to work to provide staff to connect people to grants and training them how to write those applications, especially for new businesses. And then when it came to community school and home gardens resources, talking about looking at some of the local community funds and foundations and really trying to see what money's out there and see if local communities will start allocating funds for community gardens or school gardens or home gardens. I know there are some of that is happening in some communities. So requesting those funds because they do it for other projects as well. And then we had a few other things, but yeah, that's the gist of it.
Okay. Group 3, shared vision. I think that was Amanda.
Yeah, Afton's gonna share for us.
Okay, awesome.
Hi. So we did shared vision stuff. Again, kind of like the other two groups, it was just enough to kind of scratch the surface. And if we could solve all the problems, then it would be fantastic. But one thing we did have in common was a couple of us were involved in like food farm policy councils, regional councils, and utilizing those to share resources and then share with the commissioners and policy leaders a lot more. We meet with the commissioners once a year, and it was recommended meet more often than that. And then also with the understanding the benefits, one of our people in our room has a physician that does physician buy-in really well, where they can discuss healthy foods and the value of local fresh foods with patients right there. And that's, did I miss anything?
Okay, thanks, Afton. Breakout 4, which was human capital, Carrie Ebert.
Wow, you combined those into one, A and B into one, and there were only 2 of us.
Sorry.
So, and that is a really a big topic, I think, the identified.
I trusted that you and Russell could solve all the problems, Carrie.
Well, we did, but unfortunately, I got bogged down explaining to him what SARE is. So but anyway, there were 4 areas under that, and we really only got to 2. But I think that the overarching theme from what we visited about is that we need reliable trained labor in all areas of the food system, and but that this is a long-term project. And so to be able to identify concrete activities or programs in 15 minutes, we didn't do it. But, and Rebecca, you may be able to help me with this because Russell emphasized that activities to get this thing moving should maybe look like projects that are happening in Wichita right now with people who are committed to plan and involve funders. So I just put in my notes Wichita model. Hopefully
I can follow up if I need to.
You can help with that. And along the issue of labor, which kind of got us bogged down a little bit, I just returned from the SARE State Coordinators meeting, the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education State Coordinators meeting for the North Central region. And we have identified ag labor as a regional initiative for 2025 and 2026. So that will be an issue that Sarah will be addressing directly as best we can for the next 2 years. So thanks for putting me in that breakout room because it's on top of the mind. So
I totally knew that when I put you in there.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know who leaked that information to you, but I just learned about it last Wednesday.
Brilliant happenstance. Okay,
Yes.
breakout 5A, technical assistance, Chelsea.
Yeah, so like all the other groups, not enough time. We didn't get through all of the bullet points that we had to discuss. But regarding kind of assistance and technical resources for addressing like climate change, obviously weather issues, some of that is also going back to the old school communication. A lot of farmers, as they're aging, they're not quite as technology savvy. And so making sure that all aspects of communication is being reached, and that there are some really great cost sharing programs out there. So just really tapping into those and trying to make them more accessible and available, and that everybody knows about them out there. And then moving on to opportunities for development education, we had kind of discussed the peer-to-peer model and kind of the learn while you the earn while you earn while you learn type of model, where getting people kind of peer mentoring as a really important staple for development and education and increasing just involvement in the kind of food system. Those are just some of the highlights.
Sorry. Also 5B, Tandy, technical assistance and resources.
Sure. I had Sheila Robertson and Bill Price, and we tried our best to get through some of this, but after the harvest was shared as a program related to the food waste management, ideas for office hours direct chat resources for this technical assistance, that, just having that ability, that type of a program available might be helpful. Supporting the land access. We talked about business. It was Bill that shared an idea about just better business planning so that someone knows how much they want to make, and therefore then how much land they truly do need. You may need less than you realize too. And then Bill had also had some experience recently with aquaponics, hydroponics in some of his works, and how that might be a real resource related to climate change. But Chelsea's group had come up with the idea of champions mentors, and that had lifted up from our group too, from Sheila. So that's kind of what we got to.
Okay, thanks, Tandy. Breakout 6A, Chucky, with policy regulations and government support.
We solved all the world problems in our 15 minutes.
I'm glad.
So we're looking for easy wins, and so we kind of ran through each of them as quickly as we could. The one being engaging in meaningful ways our city, council, schools, district, and state, specifically kind of talking about trying to get the schools to consider the free meals for all, and the idea that could lead to more schools doing it with more data. State house advocacy and those kinds of things, which you can look at the specifics of that one. Municipal food waste and composting, just happened to be the two of us were kind of from the same area, and we know that our city is ready to launch a new trash service. And so, just encouraging the idea that we could also maybe encourage recycling and food waste, composting, et cetera, in a very specific space when you have opportunities coming along. And just really educating the importance on that one. Zoning codes and ordinances within city limits. This one kind of became an interesting conversation. And so really education across really from growers, making sure that they're doing it in a way that is safe, secure, safe for their neighbors and those kinds of things when you're talking about urban or agriculture in any fashion. But also knowing that there is food waste, or there's waste, and there's waste products when it comes to raising animals or garden kind of things. And implementation of universal free school lunch meals also took a good part of our conversation. Just also kind of looking at the idea that Kansas Appleseed also has done some data collection for that. And knowing that schools will helping schools make the leap from knowing they're going to pay a little more for the school lunches up front, but knowing that there are benefits that come out of that in the long run, that they in test scores, let me try that again, test scores, and also in having the idea that they are more likely to participate in school, those kinds of things. And then resources, there's Farm Bureau for the approach to paying off school meal debt in the district, and there's some other really great ideas in there, I'm sure. So.
Okay, thanks, Chucky. I know we are at our time boundary, so if you have to jump off, I understand. And Sarah McAllister, I think you're going to report out from our last breakout group.
All right, yes. I was with Aaron, Tara, and Debbie, and we had the policy, regulations, and government support. And we just kind of discussed like promoting different things that are being done to kind of get their attention of like, if we're having to get creative to meet the needs in different ways, then that might, get their attention to prioritize certain things related to maybe food access. If they're seeing people using grant funds for something like transportation vouchers, or just different ways that we might promote the farmers market with double up and triple up food bucks, or just even using some grant funds for some other market dollars that could be used. That was just kind of a way like for activities and ways to get their attention that we discussed. And then just having specific asks too for the leaders when we can think of specific ones. And then for programs, Debbie mentioned in Allen County that she worked for Farm Bureau, and they were approached to pay off school meal debt for a certain district. It was around $3,000, she said. So just kind of related to universal free school meals, and how shortly after there was a district-wide free school meals policy approved. So we spent a little bit of time discussing that one specifically. And then just, it made me think of several districts in my area too that have also switched to that, adopting that policy for free meals for the whole school. That's pretty much what we ended up discussing.
Okay. Well, thanks, Sarah. And thank you everyone for sticking out all the way to the end. I hope you felt like it was a good use of your 90 minutes over the lunch hour. And we look forward to hearing how you use the report in your communities in the future.